I think you can open your eyes now. I'm Deepak Chopra. I'm not really, but he's here. I specialize in intros for Deepak.
Hello, my friend. Let me get past you.
And
You better explain what I do.
don't need.
You don't need that.
And I'm Jimmy Barnes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so since it's nice to be with all of you, Conscious Club guys, I thought what I should do is, since this is the Conscious Club, I should talk a little bit about consciousness, right? So if you go and Google the two most important questions in science right now, or look at Science magazine, the first question is open questions, means that science doesn't have an answer, okay? It's still looking for an answer. So the first open question in science is, what is the universe made of? And the reason it's an open question is that we don't know. 70% of the universe is a mysterious force called dark energy, which is expanding, literally, the space between galaxies faster than the speed of light. So there are hundreds of billions of galaxies. Hundreds of billions of galaxies. Our galaxy is the Milky Way. Next door is Andromeda, and then Virgo, and on and on. And our galaxy has over 100 billion stars. And scientists now tell us that there are 10 to the power of 30 billion. That means 10 followed by 30 zeros billion habitable planets now in our universe, and about 30 billion planets in our own galaxy that are habitable. So every week they discover a new planet, astronomers all over the world. So the distance between the galaxies, the space between the galaxies, is expanding faster than the speed of light because of dark energy, and we have no idea what it is, okay? So even though the universe is about 13.8 billion years since this universe was born, the cosmic horizon is 47 billion light years away. And galaxies are tumbling into the unknowable faster than the speed of light beyond the cosmic horizon. Not the unknown, the unknowable. Okay, because by the time light gets from there to here, our galaxy and our solar system will have exhausted its thermonuclear energy and burnt itself up into the heat death of absolute zero. Unknowable. 25%, actually 26% of the universe is dark matter, which is invisible. And we don't know what it's made up of. All we know is that it's not atomic. So everything that we know is atoms. Your body is made of atoms, which came from stars. But non-atomic matter, what could it be? If it's not atoms, then we can't interact with it because it doesn't reflect light, absorb light, emit light. So there's no way of knowing what it is. So that leaves 4% of the universe, which is made up of atoms. Now, of that 4%, which includes all these galaxies, billions of stars, billions, hundreds of billions of stars, trillions of planets, most of the atomic universe, 99.9999%, is invisible interstellar dust, which has not yet become stars. In fact, right now, the astronomers believe that no more stars will be generated. It's done. That part of the evolution of the universe is over. So the visible universe, with all the stars, galaxies, billions of planetary systems, trillions, is 0.01% of what's out there. The rest is unknown and unknowable. Now here's the problem. The 0.01%, which is the visible universe, is made up of atoms. But what are atoms made up of? They're made up of particles. If you've been to basic physics, they're made neutrons, protons, electrons. But now we know that those are made up of quarks, which are made up of gluons and muons and all of that. But as Higgs boson and all of that, right? But when you get to the bottom of it, when particles are not being observed, or they're not hanging out with other particles, then they disappear into waves. And unlike particles, which are material objects, waves are not material at all. And they're spread out across the entire universe. So what's the universe made of? Nothing. That's why it's a tough question to answer. What's the stuff of the universe? It's non-stuff. What's the matter that makes the universe? It's not matter. What is the nature of the physical universe? It's not physical. So what is it? Okay, so let's leave that first question aside now. The second question that science has no way of answering, the second open question, is what's the biological basis of consciousness? Okay? Where is consciousness? And how is it produced? So we're all conscious beings. You have something here called the Conscious Club. I think it's important to know what consciousness is, isn't it? Because without consciousness, you can't experience anything. In fact, there's a lot of argument amongst consciousness experts on how to define consciousness. They argue, fight about it. So the last time I was at a consciousness conference, the common agreement was the agreement that everybody came to. A working definition of consciousness is its personal subjective experience. Okay? So right now you're experiencing me. You're experiencing this stage. You're experiencing the color red. But you're also experiencing your thoughts. And here's the problem. We don't know how that happens. Okay, so when you see that color, there's no red beam of light coming from there to your eyes. What's coming is totally invisible. It's invisible. We think photons. So a photon hits your eyes, and then an electrical current goes from your eyes to your brain. And in your brain, there's some electrochemistry, synaptic networks go on and off, and you experience the color red. How? How does a photon going to your eyes create not only the color red, but this three-dimensional world in space and time? We don't know. Scientists have no idea. Or even mental activity. So instead of looking at the color red or looking at me, just in your mind's eye, can you just see a sunset on the ocean right now? Can you see one? You see a picture, right? Beautiful sunset? You see the picture, right? Where is the picture? If I went inside your brain, do you think I'd see a picture of a sunset? No, I'd see same electrochemistry. So how do we experience anything? We all the time we are experiencing the world. We experience our own body. We experience this room. We experience mental activity, imagination, images. We experience emotions. We experience thoughts. How does it happen? And scientists say we don't know. Okay. Now think about this. These are the two most important aspects of existence. One is there's a universe. And two is we experience it, right? Conscious beings are experiencing existence. So there's existence and there's awareness of existence. Consciousness is awareness of existence. And we have no idea about either in science. So when science asks questions that it can't answer, some scientists come along and say, the reason you can't answer these questions is you're maybe asking the wrong questions. Okay, and so this, by the way, this problem of consciousness is called the hard problem. Okay, there's an easy problem which is solved, which is that every time you have an experience, whether it's mental or physical, your brain shows activity. And for every experience, there are different parts of the brain which we can map out these days that get activated. But that does not explain what's happening. Correlation is not causation. So there's a correlation of every experience in your brain. But correlation is not causation. Let's say I get up every morning at 6 o'clock and the sun rises. I don't make the assumption that my getting up caused the sun to rise. Right? That would be stupid. But brain activity does not cause consciousness. And if it does, then we have no idea how it does. Okay? So many scientists are now saying, not all, they'll get there one day. They say actually the universe is consciousness. Okay, the universe is consciousness. And we are part of it. We are the conscious beings that participate in the creation of the universe. We are the conscious beings that participate in the creation of the universe. But so is everything else. Everything is conscious. The human species is probably, now that there are 30 billion planets in our own galaxy, we don't know if there are beings that are more advanced than us. And depending on their location, if they're looking at planet Earth right now, then some are seeing a bunch of rocks, some are seeing dinosaurs, and some are seeing the internet technology. Because, it takes light that much time to get from here to there. So which is the real reality? The dinosaurs, the bunch of rocks, are conscious beings through which the universe is looking at itself. So the universe is consciousness, and we are little drops in that universal consciousness. You can call it God, cosmic consciousness, whatever. But we are the activity of the universe through which the universe is looking at itself. This is the observation deck for the universe to look at itself. Star stuff. Our bodies are made of stars. They were generated. The carbon, the hydrogen, the oxygen in your body comes from stars. Who are we? We are stardust beings that are self-aware. So Rumi, the great Sufi poet, he says, consciousness sleeps in minerals. It starts to dream in plants. It starts to wake up in animals. And then in humans, it wants to know itself. Okay, not all humans, but humans who belong to the consciousness club wants to know itself. So here's how some scientists are thinking of consciousness right now. They're thinking of consciousness as being everywhere in the universe, everywhere, as a fundamental property of the universe, more fundamental than gravity, more fundamental than space and time. Okay, because it has to be more fundamental than space and time, because space and time are experienced in consciousness. Where do you experience space and time? In your consciousness. Nobody can see either space or time, but you have the experience in consciousness. Where do you experience your body? In consciousness. Where do you experience your mind? In consciousness. Where do you experience the entire universe? In consciousness. Okay, so consciousness is the fundamental activity of the universe. And its sentience means it senses itself as the universe. So consciousness senses itself as the universe. And then it responds to what it senses, and then it evolves. So consciousness is sentience, it's self-knowing, it's self-organizing, it's self-regulating, it's self-evolving. And it expresses itself in what are called polarities or duality, even though it's a single field. It expresses itself as complementarity. So wave and particle are complementary states of consciousness. Biological organism and environment are complementary states of consciousness. Genes and epigenes are complementary states of consciousness. And then there's no problem. Is it a wave? Is it a particle? It depends. If you want to do a wave-like experiment, then it's a wave. If you want to do a particle-like experiment, it's a particle. Just yesterday, I published a paper with Henry Stapp, he's now about 84, 85, but he worked with Heisenberg and Wolfgang Pauli and John Wheeler, one of all the three major pioneers of quantum physics, and who disagreed with Einstein on the nature of reality, and turns out Einstein was wrong and they were right. But in any case, Henry Stapp very kindly co-authored this paper with me yesterday. You can find it on Huffington Post, and also the San Francisco Chronicle, anywhere. You can just Google the paper if you want. And basically the paper says that every choice you make contributes to the evolution of the universe. Not just your evolution, to how the universe is evolving. Because choices in consciousness and physical reality are complementarities. There are two aspects of the behavior of consciousness, and the universe is an activity in consciousness. So this is the very big picture, right? And it's mind-boggling. But it's also very empowering, because as you go to the depths of your own being, you discover the self of the universe. Your inner being, the self of the individual, is also the self of the universe. That is empowering. And Rumi, the Sufi poet, says, you're not just a drop in the ocean, you're the mighty ocean in the drop as well. You have the power, you have the energy, you have the knowledge of the universe within you. Now that is mind-boggling and very empowering, and also you contribute to the evolution of the universe. So, on a more practical level, perhaps even a more mundane level, at our center in California, where we see patients with various diseases, and we've seen over the years many kinds of remissions in many illnesses, chronic illnesses. We thought we would do some studies to see if the practices of meditation and other practices too, like yoga, breathing exercises, detox procedures that we do as part of a program called Perfect Health, if they had any effect on our biology. Now we know from past experiments done by various meditation disciplines, including transcendental meditation, that there's some studies that happened in the 70s, 80s that were quite remarkable in showing the beneficial effects of meditation. So those studies were on things like blood pressure and things like certain markers of stress, etc., and they were pretty good. But at our center, we combine various aspects of what, for lack of a better word, are consciousness practices. Okay, so there's transcendence, which means going into the gap between thoughts, which is presumably what you were doing when I came in. So there's transcendence. There's self-awareness, and when we say self-awareness, different aspects of the self, body awareness, or awareness of breath, or awareness of, and it's possible now to be aware through various practices of what's happening inside your body, okay, or awareness of mental space. Mental space means awareness of thoughts, emotions, relationships, etc., sensations. So all these things fit into the category of self-awareness because these are aspects of ourself. And then there's self-reflection. When you ask yourself questions, who am I? What's the meaning of life? Why are we here? What is the meaning of death? Does God exist? If God exists, so what? There are 30 billion planets. How is he, she, it trying to figure out each one of our lives? Okay? Does God care? Do we have a soul? These are questions that have been asked since ancient times. And, when people get so caught up in everyday little minor things that they forget that there's a huge mystery, there's a big mystery, existence. There's a saying amongst American Indians, while you worry about this, that, and engage in melodrama, a great wind is blowing across the sky. And dark energy is expanding the universe faster than the speed of light. But we forget to ask these questions. But the interesting thing is that those who do ask these questions have an experience called revelation. Okay, when they ask these questions in deep stillness, they have an experience called revelation, which has been existed throughout the ages in every wisdom tradition. So they experience a deep mystery, they have a peak experience, they have the emergence of what is called platonic truth, goodness, beauty, harmony. They understand evolution, and they lose the fear of death. And they also have a transformation of their consciousness that goes in the direction of equanimity, creativity, loss of the fear of death, and love and compassion and joy. Actually, we are now looking at people who have these experiences, and it's really remarkable how many people in the whole world right now are, in a sense, waking up. And so, in Western psychology, there's an unfortunate term. It's called the subconscious mind. There's no such thing as the subconscious mind. What we call the subconscious mind is the supraconscious mind, because it never sleeps. It's running the universe right now. And to wake up to that mind is to wake up to reality, to wake up to divinity. And that's also, by the way, the practice of yoga is about that. It's to wake up to the mind that never sleeps. So at our center, we have these practices: self-reflection, self-awareness, transcendence, but also knowing that the universe that you're experiencing every day is a projection of consciousness. And that includes your body. Okay, that includes your mind. So if you look at these wisdom traditions, the Christian theologian Teilhard de Chardin called it, he said there's a biosphere, there's an astrosphere, there's a noosphere, there's a theosphere. But in Judaic tradition, that theosphere is called Ein Sof. Okay, it's the transcendent field of possibilities. In Vedic tradition, it's called Brahman. Okay, in the Buddhists call it Dharmakaya. All different words for the same field of possibilities. It's a field of infinite possibilities. It's self-aware. It's creative. It's unpredictable, thank God, because if it was predictable, there would be no creativity. It's the unpredictability, the not knowing that creates everything. If you know, then you can't create. There's nothing to create, right? So it's unpredictable. It's the field of uncertainty, field of infinite creativity, evolving, infinite imagination, and imbued with intention. And we are part of it. So that's the great beauty, that now we have technologies to look within that actually are being validated by science. So we decided to look at a few things. We first went to a Nobel laureate, Elizabeth Blackburn, and we looked at the enzyme telomerase in those practicing these spiritual disciplines. And telomerase is an enzyme that controls the length of telomeres, which are like little buttons at the end of your chromosomes. As we grow older, the telomeres get shortened, the enzyme goes down, and when the telomeres fray, then the gene material also frays, the chromosomes fray, and that's when physical death happens. And what we found is in 4 days of meditation and these other practices, the telomerase went up by 30%, which is shocking. Okay, so then we looked at the entire genome. We have 23,000 genes. 65% of our genes are the same as a banana. And many of our genes are the same as a fruit fly. And so, the DNA, which is the alphabet of life, is only 4 letters. English language has 27 letters, but DNA has 4 letters. And only 3% is genomic. The rest we have no idea, like the whole universe. Only 4% is visible universe, or 0.01% actually. 3% of your DNA codes for proteins. The rest is called intergenic DNA. No idea what it's doing. So, we think we know a lot of science. We don't know anything. And actually, it's such a deep mystery that it's mostly unsolvable. Okay? There are blocks to it. By the time information gets to your brain through your 5 senses, it's abstracted 5 times, which means it's edited 5 times. And then in the brain, it's abstracted again, and then suddenly you have an experience. Of course, we don't know how. But, the experience is different for different species, it's different for different individuals, is different for, do I look like to an insect with 100 eyes? What's the real Deepak look like? And the answer is there's no such thing. We are at all times in the field of infinite possibilities. All times. Okay? So once you begin to understand that the perceptual world is not the real world, okay, that's why in many traditions it's called a projection, Maya, illusion. It's very convincing. It's an amazing hallucination, but it's not the real world. Okay, the real world is in the field of consciousness. We are the field, and we are the knowers of the field. So again, coming back to our experiments, everything changed. The entire genome changed in 4 days. Enzymes changed. 30,000 proteins that we measured changed, all in the direction of self-healing. Now here's another fact that you may not know. Probably some of you do, but 90% of your body is not human. Okay, so you have 600 trillion cells, only 6, which is, by the way, more than all the stars in the Milky Way galaxy, 6 times more than all the stars in the Milky Way galaxy. But of those 600 trillion, only 10% are human. So what are the rest? They are bacteria. You are a microbial colony with a few human cells hanging on. And these microbes go back to the beginning of time. To the beginning of time on our planet. So, 2.8 billion years ago, on the rims of volcanoes, there were the first living organisms called chemolitho-autotrophic hyperthermophiles. And they are our ancestors. And since then, there's been a lineage of these microbes, and they're our body now. The mitochondria that are responsible for cellular breathing, they're bacteria. Okay, and they're all over your gut, they're in your skin, they're in your fingernails, in your hair follicles, everywhere. And their genes make products every day. The genes of the microbes make products. More than 30% of the molecules in our body are the products of microbes. And they interact with our genes. Okay. So now we are learning so much about this part of us because all of human biology has been about this little bit of us. Okay? You have to be good to your bacteria because if they're not happy, they get inflamed, then they cause inflammation in your body. And now we know that these inflammatory genes lead to things like heart disease, diabetes, Alzheimer's disease, arthritis, asthma, many types of cancer. Only 5% of disease-related gene mutations are fully penetrant. 95% are based on what we do every day. Every experience we have every day changes the activity of our genes. And, actually, Ellie Mays has a baby now coming. Her experiences are influencing the personality of the baby, and that baby's next generation will be influenced through epigenetics, which means daily experience. And that includes our emotions. So if you have love, compassion, joy, equanimity, that will transfer into genetic activity in your body, in your microbes, and in the next generation and the next generation. So far we know that. This may totally change the way we understand evolution. Okay, because evolution as described by Darwin may not be right. There's no such thing as randomness in the universe. What we call randomness is unpredictability, which is creativity. Okay, so natural selection may be a creative process. And the universe is still evolving. We are at this moment as human beings, Homo sapiens on planet Earth, we are caught in what is called Midgard. Midgard means the evolution of the universe halfway through. And who's evolving? We are evolving. Consciousness is evolving. So anyway, the study was amazing. And now we're repeating the study with 6 institutions: Harvard, UCSF, UCSD, University of California, San Diego, San Francisco with the Nobel laureate, and Scripps, where we have the best digital technology in the world. So you can put a little sensor here about the size of a Band-Aid, a little sensor here, size of a Band-Aid, and then your iPhone or your Android or whatever you have, your Samsung will pick in information about your heart and brain and immediately transmit it to a supercomputer at Scripps in instant analysis. And then we correlate that with genes, epigenes, bacteria, microbiome, proteomics, etc. So this project is called SBTI, and short for Self-Directed Biological Transformation Initiative. Mouthful, but you know. Basically, you're in charge, okay? You're in charge of your biology. You're in charge of your mind, and you're in charge of the universe, which will be the next step. So we're doing this project right now, actually. And you can find out more about it if you go to choprafoundation.org. And you can even participate in it if you want to at some point. We're doing it in various stages. It's a very involved process, but by the time we are done, one more step will be added to our understanding of consciousness. So the great Indian philosopher, teacher, Krishnamurti, I've gone over time, he said the highest state of intelligence is the ability to observe yourself without judging yourself. The highest state of intelligence. So here's what I'll do as we finish. As you're listening to me right now, just turn your attention to who's listening. That presence that you feel right now, it's your soul. It's not your mind, which might be saying, I wish I'd gone to the bathroom before. Or, It's your soul. And the great wisdom tradition says, hang on to that. It's the only part of you that's real. The rest is, it comes and goes. You can say, to the rest, you can say, been there, done that. But this part of you is evolving as the universe. So hang on to it and become the observer of the observer. That's all there is to it. Thank you very much.
I've got a little gift here for you from the Conscious Club. My name's Tim Brown, by the way. Lovely to meet you. One of the founders of the Conscious Club.
Thank you, sir.
We'd like to give this to you. May I?
Yes.
A little gift from us for your time here at the Conscious Club. We really appreciate you taking your time. We know you're very busy, and you've got an event in Coolum this weekend.
Yes.
And that's a 3-day weekend, is it not?
Yes.
Yeah, starting tomorrow.
Tomorrow evening and through Sunday.
Through Sunday.
I came here just for you guys.
It's very, very special.
Okay.
So we want to thank Deepak very much. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you very much, Deepak. Thank you for your time.